we get through, and Pat Clark, who was our attorney, was like, okay, I'm done, and we all just sat there. And it was Kirkpatrick was like, okay, let's run it.
I have one. It's not from official.
Oh,
Sarah Ganem wins for Sandusky County.
Rumors about Jerry were circulating for, I wouldn't even want to say years, would you say, Joe? Yeah. Nobody could get their head around it.
I was 22 or 23 years old when I first heard the initial sort of rumors about Sandusky. It came by way of just a regular conversation with someone in town who said, this guy's under investigation and it could be a big deal.
She came in to see us. I think she came into our old office on Market Street, talked to her for quite a while. Couldn't get into the whole Sandusky thing yet, even though we knew that she was digging into the same story that we were also on, trying to prove the rumors. She was hired, and the very first day, and she tells the story better than I do.
I kind of blurted out on my first day, I feel like we should talk about this thing I've been hearing.
At that point, we all shared information. The Capitol reporters talked about what they knew about the grand jury. The sports guys talked about what they'd heard on the fields up there. And Sarah shared what she knew on the cops beat.
They cut me loose pretty much, not that I wasn't doing the job that I was hired to do, because I definitely was, but they were giving me a lot of flexibility and leeway to pursue this.
I was kind of the right-hand man to Sarah Ganem. I was kind of tagged with her about first reads, discussing stories, and kind of that first editor, line editor and story editor for her. So what my job was is to, download information and how do we tell a story and help her craft a story from the information that she had.
It was just a matter of being really cautious, really careful, documenting as much as we could, talking to as many people as we could, and stringing together a timeline as best we could. Just really the fact that he was, to prove the fact that he was under investigation, not anything beyond that, but that we could say that there are people who are looking into this, for sure. And that's what the first story was really about.
Beauty of it was that initial story, which then did not get a lot of attention, as Kay was saying, was something that was built on something, on something, on something. And when it ran, there was nothing to pick apart from it.
But then Sarah published a couple stories throughout that summer.
Yeah.
As more, because it was getting that first
That got
parent,
people
that
to
first
talk.
mother to talk.
Yeah.
We had no idea what a serial predator he had been. But when people saw one, they started coming forward. And Sarah said it, she's the one that first said it. We had to keep the victims first.
Yeah.
This was a story about what had happened to these young boys.
When you hear about one allegation, it could go either way. He may never be charged, right? When it became clear that there was many, and that many of them were so similar, the details of the crimes were so consistent, he had such a pattern, that for me was a moment that that I remember. There was a memorable moment because it became clear there aren't multiple people who are decades apart in age who are coming up with the exact same stories, having never met each other.
It quickly became an all hands on deck situation for the paper, and we were all roped into it, irregardless of what our regular beat was. Every day they had waves of stories that they were throwing at reporters that they needed to do those stories.
And it was a really good team. It was really David, Mike, and I. We pulled Mike off of the regular beats. He didn't even cover the election that November. We had an assistant city editor do that. He was glued to Sarah.
I don't think I could say enough about just what a fantastic reporter She was in this process.
The other thing about it is there were so many tentacles to it. I mean, like Kate said, when we started, it was just about this crime story. And then all these other things happened, including the legislature getting involved and wanting to pass legislation related to it. And, you know, we did a bunch of, you know, we must have done 20 editorials and looked at things like the makeup of the Board of Trustees. We just looked at it from every single angle, and there were so many different angles that you could look at.
When all this was happening, the amazing part about that was the connections that Sarah and other reporters had built with people. So when everyone was over here, we were over here. When that, you know, and you know, Kate and I would talk, David, Kate, we'd all have these conversations. Sarah would talk, what are we doing tomorrow? So we really stayed ahead, which was, it's one of those, it's that, you know, once in a lifetime kind of experience, journalistic experience, I think was, you know, from our standpoint. We felt really good where we were, again, because again, this was about children and people's lives and the impact of that. And when you feel like that's your North Star, I think you feel like you're in a pretty good place.
It admittedly took me a long time to understand the scope of this story. I don't think it really hit me until I started talking to people outside of Pennsylvania about all the laws that changed after his arrest, all of the, not just laws, but the way that parents and teachers and organizations talk to kids about safety, but really being a lot more straightforward about what crimes are and what grooming is. So all of that kind of combined, I think, helped this story bubble to a level that really reached a lot of people and changed a lot of laws and conversations. I mean, I started to say, parents would tell me, you know, like this summer, I'll have a different talk with my kid before I send him to baseball camp or something. You know, like stories like that really were the things that showed me how big of a deal this was.
This story, to some extent, will always be with us. There was always some new iteration down the years. It's still very much alive. But I think that Penn State hopefully learned its lesson, and I think we all need to remember that, again, at the heart, what happened up there was not the story of Big Ten football. It was the story about children who were crime victims and about a perpetrator who was allowed to wreak terror for so many years and should have been stopped a lot earlier.
It was a great moment in our history at the Patriot-News, which was a group of people working together towards a common cause from all different departments and all different whatever. And I've never seen before and since a group of people work that well together on that singular cause. It was a moment, you know, I'm not happy what happened, don't get me wrong. But to be a part of that in this industry, it was great to work with every one of those people.
This is definitely a win for the whole newsroom, for everybody standing here, but more importantly, I think it's a win for everyone in every newsroom, just like ours, all across the country, because better than any award, the most rewarding thing through this whole process has been people telling me that this story and our coverage has changed their minds about local reporting. And we all know that there are a lot of minds yet to change. But you know, for that reason, I really hope that everybody celebrates today, and thank you.